Hi, I'm Cecilia. Welcome to the study of Genesis. For more of me, find me on my Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and also my website. With them, you'll know more of who I am and what I stand for. A recap of what we have learned so far in the study of Genesis. We have learned about Abraham from Genesis chapter 11 all the way to now, his death in Genesis chapter 25. And now we are continuing on still with Genesis chapter 25, and we have learned of Abraham, we have learned of his wife Sarah, we have learned of his nephew Lot, we have learned of his children that the Lord gave to him. We have Ishmael the firstborn, Isaac the secondborn, and we have 6 other children that was born to him by Keturah, his second wife. And we learned of his decision to send his other children away from Isaac, and also let Isaac be the main inheritor of his wealth or of all that he had, because also Isaac was the promised child. And we learned of Isaac's marriage to Rebekah and how it went about with Abraham planning for that marriage and sending his servant all the way to Mesopotamia to get him a wife from there. And the servant found Rebekah and brought him to Isaac, and they both married, and Isaac married her. And yes, today we're going to learn about now the lineage of Isaac now, after Abraham's death. And last week we talked about Ishmael, and now we're going to talk about Isaac, and we're going to continue on now with the lineage of Isaac to his sons, to the sons of his sons, and all the way now to the growth or the coming of the nation of Israel. So today we're going to look at Genesis 25 verses 19 to 34 and learn from it. And it says, "These are the generations of Isaac, Abraham's son. Abraham fathered Isaac, and Isaac was 40 years old when he took Rebekah, the daughter of Bethuel of the Aramean of Padan Aram, the sister of Laban the Aramean, to be his wife. Isaac prayed to the Lord for his wife because she was barren, and the Lord granted his prayer. And Rebekah, his wife, conceived. The children struggled together within her, and she said, If it is thus, why is this happening to me? So she went to inquire of the Lord. And the Lord said to her, 2 nations are in your womb, and 2 peoples from within you shall be divided. The one shall be stronger than the other. The older shall serve the younger. When her days to give birth were completed, behold, there were twins in her womb. The first came out red, all his body like a hairy cloak, so they called his name Esau. Afterward, his brother came out with his hand holding Esau's heel, so his name was called Jacob. Isaac was 60 years old when she bore them. When the boys grew up, Esau was a skillful hunter, a man of the field, while Jacob was a quiet man dwelling in the tents. Isaac loved Esau because he ate of his game, but Rebekah loved Jacob. Once when Jacob was cooking stew, Esau came in from the field, and he was exhausted. And Esau said to Jacob, Let me eat some of that red stew, for I am exhausted. Therefore his name was called Edom. Jacob said, Sell me your birthright now. Esau said, I am about to die. Of what use is a birthright to me? Jacob said, Swear to me now. So he swore to him and sold his birthright to Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau bread and lentil stew, and he ate and drank and rose and went his way. Thus Esau despised his birthright. And that is the word of God. And from what we have read from the passage, what can we observe from it? First, we see that the age of Isaac when he married Rebekah was 40 years old. We are seeing that from what we have read today. He was 40 years old, so he probably married late. I don't know, considering that time, probably 40 years was late. But Rebekah, also we learned that Rebekah was an Aramean, that was her descent, and also Rebekah was barren, and Isaac is the one who prayed to God for God to open his womb, and God answered him and opened Rebekah's womb. And the children struggled within her, and she inquired of the Lord, the twins that she carried in her womb, and she was told that there will be 2 nations inside her, and those 2 peoples will be divided. The older will serve the younger. That is what God told her even before Isaac and Esau were born. And then she gave birth to twins, and Isaac was 60 years old. So we can say that they lived 20 years in their marriage before they had any children, because Isaac was 40 years old when he married Rebekah. So 20 years later, and then they have a child or children together. The firstborn was red and hairy. We're told his name was Esau because of that. And the secondborn was holding the firstborn's heel when he came out. That's why he was called Jacob. And the 2 sons grew up. Esau became a skillful hunter, while Jacob was a quiet man, and he stayed within the tents. Like he stayed at home. He did not go out and hunt like his brother Esau. And we also learned that Isaac loved Esau because he was a hunter. So the game that he will hunt and bring home, he will give it to Isaac and Isaac will eat. And that's why he loved him. But Rebekah loved Jacob because Jacob stayed at home with her. And we're told of the day, when Esau sold his birthright. He was coming from his hunting as usual. He did not catch any animal there, and he was very hungry. And Jacob was just at home making stew as usual, and then he came and asked for a stew. And Jacob was like, oh, this is my chance to take the birthright. Probably Jacob had learned of the importance of a birthright in their community, or being the firstborn, or being the one to inherit the inheritance from the father. So he was like, I have found my chance, I will take it. And he told Esau, give me your birthright and I will give you the stew. And Esau just dismissed the role of the firstborn in the family, and willingly, or even without much coercion, he gave it away to Jacob, and Jacob gave him the stew, and he ate and he went away. And the Bible ends by saying that is how Esau despised his birthright. Like, he did not think much of it. He did not see it as something to hold on to. He just thought it's just a birthright. I can give it away just for a plate of soup. He was hungry. You can also say he was too desperate or too hungry. He did not think straight, but still he did not see the importance of his birthright. And that is what we can observe from the passage that we've just read. Now, from the observation, what can we learn from it? We see that, firstly, Isaac pretty much married late in life, like 40 years old is pretty, in that time, even in this time, sometimes 40-year-old, you're not married yet, will be like, what's wrong with you? What's happening? What's not wrong? And he married late, we can say, at 40 years old. Probably that is why Abraham decided to find a wife for him, because he saw that, I am getting older, and my son is also getting older, and he does not have a wife. Let me take this challenge for him, or let me take this work for him and help him find a wife sooner rather than later. And Isaac knew personally the God of his father Abraham. We see that in him praying to God to open the womb of his wife Rebecca. Even though his father died, he still continued on worshiping him. So the relationship that he found from his father, he still kept on even after his father's death. So he did not stop worshiping or stop praising God immediately after Abraham died. He still continued on, so that we can say that his relationship with God was personal to him. It was not because of his father. And we can learn also that God granted the petition of Isaac and Rebecca, conceived after 20 years of marriage. So we can also see that probably Isaac had to pray for years after year after year. We know that Abraham and Sarah waited for 25 years before they gave birth to Isaac. And now Isaac, he is waiting for 20 years before God grants them a child or children. And we see the patience, we see the resilience, we see the commitment, or the steadfastness that they hold towards their faith, that even after 1 year passed, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th year, 11th year, 12th year, all the way to the 20th year, he was still praying. And after the 20th year, God blessed them. Or in the 20th year, God blessed them with children. So they waited for a long period before having children. And so this displays their faith and their trust in God. That even though they had to wait for long, they still waited. They still believed in him. They still trusted him that he will grant them their petition. And we see that the trouble between Jacob and Esau started while they were still infants. When they were still in their mother's womb, they were struggling together. We see Rebecca asking God because the children within her were struggling. We are told in verse 21 that Rebecca, that the Lord granted his prayer, and Rebecca, his wife, conceived. And the children, verse 22, struggled together within her. Like, she saw that even within in her stomach, they were still quarreling or fighting, or whatever children do when they're in the stomach. And she noticed it and asked God about it. And we see that God chose Jacob over Esau before even they were born. He told Rebecca that the older will serve the younger. He said there will be two nations, and those two nations will be divided, and the older will serve the younger. So we see that God favoring Jacob over Esau even before they were born, even before any of them did anything good or anything right. As now it is repeated in Romans chapter 9, as Paul writes and says how God elects those whom he will save without even any of us having done anything good or anything wrong. He has already chosen, he has already elected his people. And we see also that the two sons were opposite of each other's character. One was a hunter, the other one was a homeboy. He stayed at home with his mother. The other one was very outgoing, very energetic, very driven. And a hunter is supposed to be a driven person, go-getter, you can say that. But this other one was very calm, peaceful. You're told he was quiet. And you cannot say that Jacob was quiet, because considering that he is called a trickster, or he is known to be a con man, but here he is very quiet, very home oriented. He learns to cook stew. And we can say that the characters of both boys were very different from each other. They were not the same, although they were twins, but they were not similar. They were very different. And you can learn also that Jacob came to learn about the importance of a birthright. That's why he asked of it from his brother Esau. And he took his chance when it was presented to him and grabbed the opportunity, and Esau gave up his birthright to him. And you can also learn that Esau did not hold his birthright as important as it was even in that time. Even this time, the birthright was very important, but he did not take it as important. He never saw it as a big deal to have a birthright, or being the firstborn of the family. He did not see it as a big deal. So it's like he despised even the lineage or the heritage that God had given to Abraham, to Isaac. He did not see it as valuable, because it was the firstborn who was to take upon the baton, or take upon the baton? Continue on with the promises that God had given to Abraham. It was the firstborn who was supposed to take it and follow it. But here we see Esau giving it up, and it fell onto Jacob. And we also learn that God did not follow the traditions of the firstborns taking over the inheritance of their fathers. We see that now, like with Abraham, Ishmael could have been, because he was the firstborn, the one who inherited that the promise, but he did not. It was taken to Isaac, the secondborn. And also we see here in the family of Isaac, Esau was the firstborn. He could have been the one to take upon the promise or the heritage that God had given to the line of Abraham, but God did not choose him. He chose Jacob instead. So we see that he did not follow the example of the traditions of that time, that the firstborn is the one to take over after the father, but now it was the secondborn who was taking over. And those are the lessons that we can learn from the study today. And from those lessons, what can we apply to our own faith here and now? Firstly, we see that we should teach our children about our faith. So if you are a believer, a Christian, make sure that you teach your children about God, teach your children about faith, so that when you are departing, they also have developed their own personal relationship with God, so that it is not dependent on you being a Christian for them to be a Christian, but it is now upon their own self. They've carried it on their own self to continue on the faith, because now they have developed that relationship with God. They have their own commitment to God, so that their faith is not dependent on their parent or anybody else, but what they have learned, they have put it in their hearts because you have taught them. As the people of old were told, the Israelites, that teach your children the way of the Lord. They were told to put it on the doorposts, on their fingertips, that the fathers were responsible for the teaching and for the law of God to be known to their families. So you also, as the head of the family, or as the mother to the children, teach your children that they may know God personally for themselves, that they may learn, so that even when you are not around them, they're still able to carry on in the faith. The second thing you can apply is to learn to pray and wait patiently. Pray and wait for God's answer. Sometimes it takes longer, sometimes it takes shorter. We never know the timings of God, but His timing is always perfect and right. So as you pray, do not give up. Be persistent in prayer, as Jesus Christ taught His disciples. And He gave the example of this widow who went to a judge who neither feared God nor respected man. But because she prayed daily and consistently, the judge was like, since this woman is bothering me now, let me now attend to her petition and give unto her what she requires from me. And he taught that so that we may continue and be persistent in prayer. And that is also the example we see from Isaac. For 20 years, no children, but he still kept on praying until God granted them their request. So as you pray consistently, do not give up in your prayer, and be patient, waiting upon the Lord's answer. And the third thing is, God chooses whom He wills. he chose Jacob over Esau, not because Esau was bad or Jacob was better, but he just chose him because he is God. He has the autonomy to choose whom he wills or whom he wants, and he chooses whomever he chooses according to the pleasure of his will. So he remains to be God. He shows his position as God, being able to choose whom he wills. And the fourth thing we can apply is that we need to value the blessings that God gives to us. Value it, whatever God has given you, whatever gift, whatever blessing it is that he has granted to you, or he has given to you, graciously given to you. Value it. It is important, and take care of it. Don't be like Esau and sell it away and give it away and throw it away like it is nothing, because it is from God. It is valuable. So value the treasures that God has given to you. Whatever those treasures are, value them. And yes, we have come to the end of our study of Genesis today. So if there's anything else you want to add on to it, please write it down in the comment section. And I thank you for joining me today. Until next week when we meet each other again, goodbye and God bless you.